The idea for me that just because you happen to make it to the C-suite, or just because you happen to be the most senior leader, that you don't have problems, you don't have challenges, or that there might be this moral compass issue. It was mind-blowing to me because I was a young man when this happened, and I'd put so many of those people up on pedestals in my head. And I think that was one of the stories that started to level set me to go, and we're all human, and we all have some holes that we've dug, and no one is impervious to these bad decisions.
Hi, I'm Michelle Aronson, and welcome to True Stories at Work, where we discuss the best things about working in human resources. The people, the stories, and the things that happen at work that we don't even know about. I'm a recovering HR executive, certified coach, and business school professor who knows that the best stories happen at work, from heartbreaking to heartwarming, from hilarious to outrageous. Now, I get to collect great stories from amazing HR professionals and help companies create cultures that drive their business strategy. Today, you get to meet Travis, who fell into talent acquisition, where he was a natural.
I was pulling them in and earning a bunch of money from employer referral fees.
And if you have those days where you wonder if you're a therapist or an HR professional, you're not alone.
I thought maybe being a bit of a therapist and a coach was something I wanted to do. And I'm like, well, I didn't get to go to grad school. I didn't do it. Well, then I became an HR business partner. And you're like, well, congrats, whether you want it or not. Here's another knock at the office door. Here's another call.
And at the end, you'll hear a workplace confession, a little bit about my HR scrapbook. So let's get started. Travis, thanks for coming on the show.
I am super excited to have a good dialogue with you. I think it's going to be a ton of fun.
It will be. It will be. So can you tell me a little bit about where you're from and
Of course.
what your background in HR is?
Of course. So I'll go way back. Born in Memphis, Tennessee, had a father who was an HR director, interestingly enough. Moved to Michigan, which is where I still live today. Well, I did my undergrad work at Western Michigan in industrial and organizational psychology, with the intention at one point of going into union negotiation. I thought that was going to be a direction to head, the big three being here and whatnot. I struggled so hard with standardized tests that the GRE became a real challenge for me. So I decided to go to work and then back to grad school almost 10 years later, and ended up doing my MBA in finance from the University of Detroit. And in between that period of time, I found my way into the talent acquisition space. So I have been a recruiter and now recruiting leader for the best part of 27, almost 28 years now. So in between a stint a number of years back, I had the blessing of being a talent management and HR business partner for a professional services firm here in Detroit. So I've had a little bit of both sides of the fence, most of it though talent acquisition.
Bless you, because that is a lot of work, talent acquisition. It's like that treadmill that never ends. You can never shut it off. You just keep
Agreed.
running and running and running as fast as you can. That's my experience. I don't know. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. It is a treadmill that's always on 10. You kind of have to get up in the morning and prop yourself up and get your legs flying like Fred Flintstone would, set them down and be ready to run. And I think HR in general, unfortunately, from my perspective, has become a bit of a thankless world. It's so heavy on compliance, or it's so heavy on what could go wrong. There's so much that makes it difficult for HR leaders and talent acquisition leaders, when in fact, go onto any website and everyone will list that what's the most important resource? It's the human resource. It's the talent of the company. But do we really get treated that way? And one could argue that, yes, the treadmill is an accurate way to describe it. And I think a treadmill that's also never saying thank you or great job is another way to look at it too.
My treadmill doesn't thank me or tell me I did great. So I can relate to that. And it is really feeding the organization. Like the organization needs that so desperately. And that just
Right.
adds to the stress of recruiting because, yeah, we know why. Because nobody wants to fire anybody because they don't want to have to rehire them, because they don't want to wait. They needed them yesterday. It's that whole vicious cycle.
It just never stops, right? And so whether you are in a market that has it so challenging to go find talent, or is it the market where it's so challenging to retain talent? Like at some point, every market is the so challenging market. And so, yeah, I think the HR space and the recruiting space is so critically important to businesses, but it can be a grind, can it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you to all the recruiters that keep these companies going.
Cheers to that.
So you gave me some of your background, but when you were younger, in early Detroit years, what were you aspiring to be at that point in your journey?
I have I've always been pretty creative. I've loved music all my life. I played the drums, I've played the clarinet, I've played the saxophone, I tried to play the guitar. Kind of epic failures at all of them, but I have a ton of fun. I have a ton of fun with all of it. I still to this day that there's nothing cooler than live music, and I always thought being in a band, which we had one in seventh grade, Peter's Purple Pistol, we were horrible. So yeah, it was a ton of fun, and the band lasted, I think, a whopping 4.5 or 5 weeks. And as seventh graders, I don't think we saw the chance to go out and hit any big arenas. So that Peter's Purple Pistol was over.
Oh, what a bummer. So you were in a band, you're dreaming of the rock star lifestyle, and you come out of college and somehow end up in HR. How did that happen?
So, I mean, if you look back, I mean, I never really wanted to be anything, which is going to sound a little odd. I went on to school partially because it was this is what we do mentality of the family that I was raised in. I was an 18-year-old kid. I had no freaking clue what I wanted to do. And just how people interact was always fascinating to me. So I landed in the psychology program thinking at some point I would be kind of a coach and therapist. And while going through those studies, it was pumped at me that, well, you've got to find a way to make a living. And is that a way to make a living? And are you really going to get through to grad school? And if you're going to go down the philosophy path, like, can you really make a dollar there? Like everywhere I turned, someone was saying, how are you going to make a dollar? And I was a lost soul, best way to describe it. So I went all the way through 4 years of school, earned my degree. It was the very last career fair held in Kalamazoo on Western Michigan's campus, and I stumbled across a management training program. I knew my parents were going to be quite frustrated if I wasn't, gainfully employed. And a fraternity brother's girlfriend was the recruiter for it. I ended up going to work for it, and everyone kind of shook their head and said, "You're going to do what? You're going to put a suit on and you're going to wash cars and rent cars." Um, Possibly the 3 best years of my career. It was an unbelievable company. And I still have not met another organization that has put more time into developing management trainees and feeding and growing their own talent. 06598 is my employee number. I still remember it after the thousands of cars one would rent. But it was at that we had an employee referral program, and I was bringing tons of my friends on. So other lost souls were saying, I don't know what to do. And my parents say, I've got to get a job and I'm not quite sure where to be. Um, I was pulling them in and earning a bunch of money from employee referral fees. And I thought this was a promotion, but I think it was a financial play on the company's part. They said they were going to launch a recruiting team in Metro Detroit, and would I be interested? They knew I was crushing it with the employee referrals, and I love networking and that whole piece. So that's how I ended up slipping and falling into recruiting. And I never really looked back.
So you were a natural.
I,
You were doing it just for $5,000 a pop.
I wanted the cash for $1,500 a crack back in 1995. We were having all kinds of fun making a whopping like $25,000 a year. We were doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And I think, you joke about being a natural, like everything about it just kind of fit. So yeah, I joke like I've been trapped in recruiting, but I don't know if there's anything else I would really love doing. It's been a great industry for me, thousands of people that I've been blessed to connect with work and for my family and everything about it. So yeah, I love it.
I just want to say a lot of your story resonates with me. Being aspirationless in college, I mean, I was a psychology major, and my dad wanted me to select business as a minor, and I chose art history as a minor. Potentially the least employable college grad ever. I'm in these, I'd call them nerd book clubs, where professors get together and read books about
Yes,
improving academia or different things. And there's a book called The Secret Syllabus. And it is basically you're in my journey about how you're not supposed to know what you want to do when you get into college, and how you're supposed to follow the threads of things that interest you and not really feel like you have to have it all figured out. And so good for those two Harvard professors for writing that book. But we lived it. We knew that answer a long time ago.
we did. That's
I
exactly right.
I'd love to get into some stories if you don't mind. So tell me a story about yourself, maybe a time in your career where it really changed you.
There's one story that always pops into my head when someone asks a question around this topic. This would have been late 2007, early 2008. So the kind of the housing market crash and that bubble burst was getting ready to happen. So business was a bit of a struggle. So companies had stopped hiring. There were signs that the recession was coming and the implosion was coming. And so we had a group of us that I would say we were all struggling and didn't quite know it, maybe know how bad. The team I'd worked for at the time invested in executive coaching, which is what inspired me to become a coach. Because in 2008, I met with a woman who had a concept that she'd created and referred to it as fear to freedom. So it was the idea of let's not live a fear based life. Let's try and be as free as we could. And we were in the high potential group. We all met once a week as a cohort, and then we had individual meetings. My performance was struggling. I felt financially like I was struggling. And we were in a session in a closed door office setting. And if you ever see those movies where there's that crescendoed moment where the music plays and like a Rocky movie, like, what are you afraid of? Like that kind of moment. And she said, what are you afraid of? And I paused and I didn't want to spit it out, but I I also love a good cry. I call it the control alt delete for the soul. So I got pretty emotional and she asked again and I said, "What if I am full of shit? What if everything I've done to this point, what if I am full of shit?" And tears coming down and I'm frustrated because I'm breaking down at the work setting, that kind of deal. And my coach, who I stuck with for almost 14 years, she paused for just a minute and looked very nonchalantly at me and said, "Well, if you are, wouldn't you want to know?" Changed my world, changed
Mhm.
everything about the way I lead people, changed everything regarding how interested I became in my own behaviors and introspection and personal accountability and everything that I would say now I stand for. Her one question just snapped me into a place of, well, what if I was? And I was. I mean, there were so many things that you could point back to and say I was totally full of shit. Yet I gave myself some patience and grace, kind of that moment forward, and said, well, let's go figure out why. And we did. It took us years to unpack why did this behavior or this trigger point come out. And I learned how to be more compassionate with other people, and everyone's on, their own version of the journey that I felt like I was on. So that's a story that will always come out first when you say what
Mhm.
shapes you or what changed you, because it's changed my personal life, my professional life, my life as it relates to just being on the planet, one human to another. So Yeah, the idea of couldn't we all be a bit full of shit? Yes. And can't you change your behavior set and go do some cool and amazing things? Answers yes there too.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind.
I would like to do a PSA for coaching because when I first experienced coaching and sort of one of those assessments, this one happened to be the DISC, where I realized how annoying I am to other human beings. I had no idea why other people annoyed me, but as soon as I took that DISC, all of a sudden I could see how helpful each different style was, but I had no frame of reference that, I'm a D, so, it's never any
All
good
right.
with that.
So I'm high I, which
Me
means I'm
too.
going to attempt to talk you through everything.
Mhm.
And I'm high D.
Me
So I
too.
bulldoze my way.
Yep.
So apparently this is why we're going to be friends. But I think that the joke behind the assessment piece and transition this into a bit of the HR world and the talent management space, I think the more we could do earlier in people's careers to allow them the information to
Mhm.
say, how are you hardwired? Because you're uniquely powerful, you're uniquely hardwired. But if I want to talk everything out and you want to talk everything out, then we might want to set some parameters on meetings we have that says, hey, we got 20 minutes, let's get this done. Because if the two of us get in a room, we're going to want to talk this out probably for hours. Like,
Mhm.
I think there's a ton of goodness that comes from the assessment play. But back to your coaching PSA, I'm with you. I have a coach today. It has changed my life.
Mhm.
And both of the women I've worked with as coaches, one for 3 years now and the other for 14, uh, literally the best 17 years of my life because I've learned so much about myself in support from them.
Yeah. I just couldn't believe how differently I saw the world just from being in the program. I wasn't even a coach yet. I just had all that self-awareness that I needed. What surprised you as you entered this world of HR and leadership? What surprised you the most?
The idea of how much information people want to share with their HR leaders. So when I was able to play more of an HR business partner role, you become a confidant for hundreds of people. And I think we had pretty good ratios at the firm I was at. So I think I had 220 or 230 people. And those 220 or 230 people all wanted someone to talk to. Like, I didn't realize, even though I had said earlier in our discussion that I thought maybe being a bit of a therapist and a coach was something I wanted to do. And I'm like, well, I didn't get to go to grad school. I didn't do it. Well, then I became an HR business partner. And you're like, well, congrats, whether you want it or not. Here's another knock at the office door. Here's another call. And I think one of my favorite stories about the things that you would never expect to go through in the HR space. I had a situation pop up where gentleman was unbelievably polished, the most articulate like orator you could ever picture, and he popped in and nonchalantly hired as one of our senior executives, and he quickly said to me, "Hey, I'm getting ready to make the move, and I wondered if I could get the American Express application for the corporate card real quick." And I said, of course, no problem. So we got that process rolling, and he was in our C suite, and so I was doing a bit of concierge level service for him. And a week goes by, and he popped in. He said, "Hey, have you seen that American Express card yet? I had it sent to the office." And I said, "Well, no, it wouldn't come to me. I'm sure it's either in your mail slot or back at your house." And this goes on for another day or two, where he's now calling 3, 4, 5 times. He's emailing incessantly, and turns out that he owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to other organizations for doing the same thing. He had gotten himself hired, and he would rack up massive personal bills on company credit cards, and he would disappear. The idea for me that just because you happen to make it to the C suite, or just because you happen to be the most senior leader, that you don't have problems, you don't have challenges, or that there might be this moral compass issue. It was mind blowing to me because I was a young man when this happened, and I'd put so many of those people up on pedestals in my head. And I think that was one of the stories that started to level set me to go, and we're all human and we all have some holes that we've dug, and no one is impervious to these bad decisions. So yeah, it was one of the craziest stories, and he ended up being arrested. And
Mm.
so there was fraud and all kinds of legal issues, and what a mess. But yeah, I didn't expect. I thought benefits, I thought compensation, I thought an annual review. I wasn't thinking I'd have to be like Matlock and Mission Impossible and like all the stuff to make sure that this guy didn't take more from us than he had taken from others.
That's crazy. So the credit card really did not show up, though. It was like fate
It,
because
100% fate, and his meltdown about not having it is what led us to the this is starting to feel really really weird. So yeah, in hindsight, plenty of science, but yeah, what a bizarre deal. You go through stories like this over and over and over again, and I'm sure so many of your guests have different stories and equally crazy stories. I'm sure you've seen a bunch of this on your own, but I think this plays a part into where skepticism and cynicism about people has permeated into the HR space.
Mhm.
And I still wonder, and this is maybe question back to you, how many of your guests or you in your career would say that the HR talent management suite has a voice at the big table relative to corporate America? Does the CHRO carry the same weight as the CFO or the CEO or the CIO? And I think some of that also plays a bit of where is the light at the end of the tunnel, and can we really drive the people love and the people care and the compassion that we need,
Mhm.
if you aren't ever really brought to the table. And I think there are a lot of companies still struggling with truly having HR as a strategic piece of their business and as a development piece of their business, not just as a compliance piece
Mhm.
of the business. So I don't know
Mhm.
what your thoughts are, but I'd love to hear from you on that too.
I think it is a culture thing. So I work with companies and culture and I work with the CEO. And if you are full of shit and you are acting like your people are important and you're not giving HR a seat at the table, then you're not really putting your people first. So
That's right.
I think it's a choice and it's a leadership choice. And there are some companies that are evolved. I've worked with some of them. And then there are companies that are old fashioned and have finance at the table, which is great, but turnover is expensive. So, do the math,
Absolutely.
do that financial math, and then, move the seats at the table around. I'm biased though, because I worked in HR and I do believe the work is critical to humans coming to your workplace and enjoying it.
And to your point, there are some organizations I've worked for who do an unbelievable job of making sure that people feel seen, valued, and heard. And I do think that as a culture play that you can tell quickly by the most senior leaders of any business,
Mhm.
do they really do their words and their actions align? And if they don't, sniff it out quick and hightail it somewhere else. Like, go make the choice, right?
Here's what I tell leaders. We worked for an accelerator in the last few months, and we were helping these small startups to figure out their culture. And we said, what kind of company are you? You can be the kind of company that wants to make gobs and gobs of money and doesn't care about your people, but just have your values match that so that you're attracting the right people that are in line with that culture. You don't have to be
That's right.
a people lover. You can be a money lover. You can be competitive. There's all sorts of different ways to structure your culture, but identify it, claim it, and then promote it so that you get the right people there. And maybe they
Yeah,
will
that's
burn
right.
out, but they'll burn out rich and they'll be happy, and then
Yeah,
they'll go start some ashram somewhere
yeah,
and
that's right.
recollect their soul that has
It's
been sucked out of them.
it's so true. It's so good. I've had the last 7, 8 years of my career. I have moved into more of a business operations role, and we have two HR business partners who are they're amazing souls. And I think to the points we're making back and forth, they are looked at as business partners, legitimate business partners, and they're looked at as guides, and they're looked at as support networks. And last year we had just awful turnover, because the market had dipped. And you're going through furloughs and layoffs and impacts to humans' lives.
Mhm.
My HR business partner team not only kept me sane and kept my leadership team sane, but we were able to be pushed and held accountable to making sure we were treating people with the dignity and the humanity that they deserved. And that can become a real challenge when you're trying to balance profit and loss statements and client balance and business growth and all those things that some people might hear and go, well, it's just all gross and it's all capitalism, it's all
Mhm.
nasty. It doesn't have to be. and
Mm-mm.
and the business I work in now, we take a deep amount of respect toward the balance between let's run the business, but knowing where that business is being run from, and it's from the people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is a business. At the end of the day, you have to have money and profit come in and reinvest
That's right.
in your business. So I'm not taking away
Exactly
from
right.
that. I'm just saying, just say what you are.
Don't say that it's going to be foosball table city and we're going to have, the ice cream socials, and then yell and scream at everyone because we're not turning enough profit. Like, stop being
Exactly.
freaking confusing. Like, just be transparent and be straightforward. So,
Right.
pretty
Right.
easy way to go at it.
100%. Yeah. That's the work I do. One company at a time. That's
And keep doing it, sister.
Yeah, you can't say you're transparent when you don't share any information. Let's change your values. Let's make them be who you are. It's like online dating of company profiles, right? Their values. Everybody says they're fun, and you go on a date and they're not fun at all. Okay, I have two more questions, and
Yeah.
then you are going to be let go. Do you have any workplace pet peeves?
I think, corporate speak, don't go into a meeting with me and say, can we take this one offline and we'll circle back on them? Like, you see all those little spoofs that are made on the socials. I love those because it's so true. And I would just rather get in. I think meetings can be done in 10 or 15 minutes. And I don't want any BS. Like, let's just get at it. I don't want to hear all your corporate talk and polish talk. I want to know how you're feeling. So I don't like to dance around. That's a peeve of mine when someone says
Mm-hmm.
everything's great and I know they're pissed. Just tell me why you're pissed. What happened?
Mm-hmm.
What have we done? Is it a behavior that I might have put forward? If it is, can I change it? Like, just, you can't get it better if you don't tell me what's going on. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
pet peeve too. Like, pretend that everything's okay when it's not.
I want to make up like a corporate speak word for corporate speak. We'll come
That's
up with
it.
a word and then we'll spread it around.
Yeah, that's right. We'll get some merch. We'll sell some t-shirts. We'll do the
Uh-huh.
thing. It'll be good.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Do you have anything left unsaid that you wanted to share?
No, I feel like this has been a really cool discussion, and I think we've covered a ton. And I tend to leave every discussion I ever get into with a whole bunch of gratitude. So, gratitude to you, Michelle, for what you're putting together with us, and gratitude for new friendship, and gratitude for those who are in the space that we're in, who work the day in and day out, making sure people are feeling like they can be seen, valued, and heard. So, just a ton of love for what you're doing, and thanks so much for having me on. It's been great.
Thank you. Thank you. You were a delightful guest, as I knew you would be. So we'll thank our unnamed friend
Our unnamed friend, yes.
for
Cheers to
the
her.
introduction, whatever her name
Done.
is.
We've all done something bad at work, but here's your chance to confess. From small wrongs like borrowing office supplies to simplify your back-to-school shopping or snacking on a coworker's lunch, to the major workplace sins, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll type. Here is today's conscious clearing confession.
Early in my HR career, I wanted to make sure that I remembered things. There were strange things happening all around me every day, and I knew that I would begin to forget, and they would be replaced with new strange things. So I started a folder in my drawer, and I would stick kind of strange, crazy things in there. And the longer I worked in HR, the more selective I was about what I would put in that folder, because there were crazy things happening all over the place. It got more and more extreme. So maybe it's because I was in a higher position, so I was privy to more information, but I called this folder the Hall of Shame, and I typed a nice little white label on it and stuck it in my right-hand desk drawer that I could lock. Over the years, I tucked away 20 years of sweet memories into that file folder. And the contents included presentations from executives that were meant to be funny, but were wrong. Pictures of strange things that, for some reason, found their way to HR. Crazy, anonymous letters. Completely unhinged emails sent to me or all employees. If it was shameful, memorable, or funny, it went into my Hall of Shame. At my beautiful going away party, which was limited to only my current and former HR team and the leaders that I admired most in my company, I worked very hard to pull that Hall of Shame into a scrapbook of memories, slipping each lovely, shameful item into a plastic paper protector and inserting them all into a 5-inch binder. I did have a lot of memories. I always questioned if people actually read anymore, but the guests who arrived at my going away party stood at that book looking and reading every single page. Some were innocent pictures of people at the party in their younger and often slimmer days. There were locks of hair, don't ask, and letters of low appreciation for the holiday gifts that my HR team worked so hard to distribute to our employees over the years. Much of it was crazy, and most of it was benign. I know those memories were not mine to take. They were the property of my employer. So I wanted to see where this book of treasure would end up, and my favorite vice president of risk management took it after the party for safekeeping in her office. If you can hear this message, I want you to stop sitting on the sideline and engage with me. It's easy to visit my website at cultureandstrategylab.com, where you can share a workplace confession, drop some wisdom, or reach out about being a guest on the show. This podcast is sponsored by Culture and Strategy Lab, where we believe that the heartbeat of every successful company lies where your culture meets your strategy. And we design data-driven solutions to align the hearts and minds of your people with your company's purpose, so you can build a strong culture for your growing business. Thanks for listening to the show. Stories are what people remember and how we connect. So please share yours with me. Thanks. Haiku for Travis. Travis slipped and fell into a great job where he is not full of shit.